Summer 2026. On a grassland on the Asian plateau, an old horse died. Around the carcass, a group of vultures were feeding. This was the most ordinary scene in nature. But four people did not see it that way. They thought it was too cruel. The horse was already dead. Why did it have to be torn apart? So they went forward to drive away the vultures. One of them even grabbed a vulture with her bare hands and threw it hard to the side. The whole process lasted nearly half an hour. They knelt in front of the horse's body, put their palms together and prayed. Their theme was cross-border enforcement, self-righteousness. They thought they had done a good deed. They were wrong. They did not know that what they had driven away was not a group of birds that eat carrion, the last line of defense for the entire plateau ecosystem. They also did not know what a world without vultures looks like. Someone has experienced it for us. And 500,000 people died. Today, we are going to talk about these lives that we have completely misunderstood. From vultures to chimpanzees, from crows to arapaima, each one holds a truth that you would never expect. Let's finish the story about the vultures first, because only after you understand the vulture can you truly understand the animals that come later. What were those tourists thinking when they drove away the vultures? They were thinking of kindness, of compassion. They saw a dead horse being pecked by birds and felt it was too tragic. But what they did not know is that in the plateau ecosystem, the vulture is an irreplaceable keystone species. It is a natural epidemic prevention officer, the scavenger of the entire ecosystem. Why does the plateau need vultures? Because at an average altitude of several thousand meters, the special conditions of low temperature, dryness, and strong ultraviolet radiation make microbial decomposition extremely inefficient. If a large animal carcass is left to natural decay, it often takes months or even longer. During this period, pathogens such as anthrax, bacillus, botulinum, and salmonella that breed on the carcass seep into the soil, contaminate water sources, spread through the grasslands to livestock populations, and can even trigger epidemics of zoonotic diseases. The existence of vultures is precisely to cut off this chain of disease transmission. In order to digest highly decomposed carrion and resist deadly pathogens, vultures have evolved extremely strong stomach acid over tens of millions of years. Their gastric acid pH can be as low as 0.7 to 1.2, close to industrial concentrated hydrochloric acid, nearly 10 times the acidity of human stomach acid. Not only can it rapidly break down tough proteins in connective tissue, it can also thoroughly kill the vast majority of pathogenic bacteria and viruses in carrion. Even pathogens that are lethal to humans, such as anthrax and rabies virus, are completely broken down in this strong acid environment. Their intestines also host special communities of Clostridium bacteria, which are deadly to ordinary animals, that help the vultures further break down food and neutralize residual toxins, forming a second immune defense line. Because of this, vulture excrement almost never causes pathogen pollution. It is a true harmless treatment. Their feeding efficiency is equally astonishing. An adult vulture can eat about 1 kilogram of carrion per minute. A group of dozens can clean the soft tissue of an adult yak in just 1 to 2 hours. This efficient cleaning speed means that pathogens are completely terminated in the vulture's digestive tract before they have time to spread and multiply. Moreover, vultures are the core species of the entire scavenger community. They are the only scavenger birds that can easily tear through the thick hide of large ungulates. Only after they have broken open the carcass and finished feeding can the leftover flesh and internal organ residues be used by smaller scavenging birds like magpies and rooks. After that, rodents and scavenging insects share the rest. Once vultures are absent, the entire scavenger food chain breaks directly. This is not a hypothesis. In the 1990s, India personally experienced this disaster. At that time, a veterinary anti-inflammatory drug called diclofenac was widely used to treat livestock diseases. After livestock died, the drug residues in their bodies were ingested by scavenging vultures, causing acute kidney failure. In just over a decade, the populations of 3 native vulture species in India plummeted by more than 95%. Among them, the white-rumped vulture dropped by 99.9%, going from one of the most common large raptors in the world to near extinction. This is the fastest population collapse ever recorded for any existing bird species. The vultures that once blackened the sky almost disappeared. Millions of carcasses of livestock that died from disease were left unclean, rotting and stinking under the high heat, contaminating water sources and soil. At the same time, feral dog populations exploded due to the abundant food. Studies estimate that India's feral dog population increased by at least 5 million. Feral dogs are the main transmitters of rabies, and the additional dogs led to over 38 million extra dog bites and more than 47,000 rabies deaths. India's rabies incidence has long ranked first in the world. A 2024 study further indicated that the collapse of vultures may have caused about 500,000 excess human deaths, with annual economic losses close to $70 billion. A small veterinary drug, combined with the disappearance of a keystone species, ultimately triggered a nationwide public health disaster. Those tourists who drove away the vultures thought they were doing good. But on the scale of ecology, their kindness was destroying a balance that had been maintained for tens of millions of years. Having talked about the vulture, the misunderstood scavenger, let's move on to another animal that has been misunderstood even more deeply and for a longer time. Before we begin, I want to ask you a question. What do you think is the animal most like humans? Many people would say chimpanzees. Half right. What I want to tell you is that chimpanzees are not just like humans in some ways. They are more human than humans. The story begins in 1970. The legendary primatologist Jane Goodall recorded a war that lasted 4 years in Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania. Before this, it was widely believed that chimpanzees were gentle, peaceful animals. Goodall's research completely overturned that perception. At that time, there was a complete chimpanzee community called the Kasakela group. After the old leader died, several young males failed in their bids for power and split off with their followers, establishing a new group called the Kahama group to the south. These two groups had once been one family, but after the split, the northern old group began to systematically purge the southern new group, not for food, not for mates, but simply to exterminate them. They would form patrol squads and silently creep to the border. Normally noisy chimpanzees would hold their breath throughout the patrol, not even touching a branch. Once they spotted a lone individual from the south, they would rush in and beat it to death. The most heartbreaking case was an elderly male named Goliath. He was gentle-tempered, had once been the leader of the entire group, and was a senior figure to those attackers when they were young. But simply because he stayed with the southern group, 6 of his former companions surrounded him and beat him to death. Even more disturbing was that during the attack, they made excited calls, as if celebrating a victory. This war lasted from January 7, 1974, to June 5, 1978, a full 4 years. All males of the Southern Kahama group were eliminated, the females were absorbed, and their territory was taken over. This is the famous Gombe Chimpanzee War, also known as the 4-Year War. It was the first time humans confirmed that organized warfare with the goal of genocide also exists in the animal kingdom. Why are chimpanzees so brutal? The answer is counterintuitive precisely because they are so similar to us. In biological classification, humans and chimpanzees both belong to tribe Hominini. Under Hominini, there are only 2 branches, the genus Homo, which is us humans, and the genus Pan, which is chimpanzees. Our genetic similarity with chimpanzees is as high as 98.8%, only a 1.2% difference. Chimpanzees are more closely related to humans than they are to gorillas. It is not just genes that are similar. Even their survival patterns, social structures, and even cultural transmission are exactly the same as those of early human tribes. First, their diets overlap heavily. Among all large apes, only humans and chimpanzees regularly and systematically hunt other vertebrates. Gorillas and orangutans look fierce, but in reality they eat mostly plants and insects. Their large canine teeth are for cracking nuts. Chimpanzees, however, not only eat meat, but also hunt cooperatively in teams when hunting red colobus monkeys. Some drive the prey, some block escape routes, and some deliver the final kill. This level of highly coordinated group hunting is beyond the reach of other primates. Second, their social structure is a copy of human tribal society. Male chimpanzees form close alliances, eating together, fighting together, and competing for territory together. There is a sobering rule in nature: the tighter the male alliance, the more violent the intergroup conflict. Only chimpanzees are naturally inclined to form factions. Once organizations are formed, positions override emotions, interests override old ties, and violence multiplies. This is no different from conflicts among primitive human tribes. Third, they even have their own cultural transmission. Chimpanzee groups in different regions have completely different survival skills. Chimpanzees in West Africa use stones to crack nuts. This skill takes 3 to 5 years for a juvenile to learn from its mother. Chimpanzees in Tanzania modify grass stalks to fish for termites, and some groups crumple leaves into sponges to drink water from tree hollows. These are not innate instincts. They are passed down generation by generation. Even different groups have different greeting rituals. Some touch hands, some hug, exactly like cultural differences between human regions. Eating meat, forming alliances, having culture, these instincts highly similar to humans are all written into that 98.8% shared DNA. But just when you think chimpanzees are inherently violent, nature gives us the most ironic control group, their close relatives, the bonobos. The genetic difference between bonobos and common chimpanzees is less than 0.3%, much smaller than the difference between humans and chimpanzees. Yet the social patterns of the two species are worlds apart. Women chimpanzees are patriarchal. At the slightest disagreement, they go to war, and genocide is routine. Bonobos, on the other hand, are purely matriarchal. There is no dominant male in the group, and they almost never have fatal conflicts. Their way of resolving disputes is very gentle through social touching. After a quarrel, they make contact and move on, turning big issues into small ones and small ones into nothing. Scientists speculate that because bonobos live in habitats with more abundant food and less intense survival competition, they gradually evolved a peaceful social model. What is most striking about chimpanzees is never how brutal they are, it is that they show us what humans really are underneath it all. Without laws, without morality, without the layers of civilization's discipline, would we too patrol silently along the border, waiting to strike at our former friends? Having talked about the primate most like us, let's turn to a bird that has been cursed by humans for over 1,000 years, the crow. In Chinese culture, crows have long borne the stigma of ill omen. When the crow calls, disaster arrives. This prejudice even permeates the language. Saying something unlucky is called a crow's mouth. Describing a quiet place as crow and sparrow silent, even describing a chaotic, disorganized crowd as a gathering of crows. But modern science tells us we have wronged them. Crows are actually the intellectual pinnacle of the bird world. In the classic stone-dropping water-drinking experiment, scientists placed floating food in a glass tube filled with water and provided different objects such as wooden blocks and stones. Crows were able to accurately select stones with high density and a diameter smaller than the tube's opening, dropping them into the water to raise the water level and successfully retrieve the food. According to Piaget's theory of cognitive development, the concept of conservation, understanding that volume, density, and water level change proportionally, is typically established in human children between the ages of 5 and 7. Crows can perform this kind of judgment by instinct alone. The New Caledonian crow is the second most proficient tool maker in the animal kingdom. In the wild, they use twigs to make tools to hook insect larvae out of tree holes. When the twig is not long enough, they will select a softer branch, bend one end with their beak to form a hook, and precisely extract prey hidden in crevices. Even more mind-blowing is the crow's ability for multi-step logical planning. Scientists designed a nested puzzle device. Food was placed at the deepest part of a container. The only tool at hand was a short wooden stick tied to a string, which could only reach a stone in an adjacent cage. Only by dropping enough stones could they press a seesaw to get a long stick, and only then could they retrieve the food. After a brief period of trial, the crow figured out the logic and executed the entire sequence smoothly, with almost no wasted movements. In urban life, crows' intelligence is even more visible. They drop hard-shelled nuts onto roadways and wait for passing vehicles to crush the shells. Even more astonishingly, they can understand traffic lights only when the red light is on and vehicles have stopped. Will they calmly fly down to the road to peck at the nuts? They have turned human city rules into their own foraging tools. Crows can also accurately recognize human faces and hold long-term grudges. A mask experiment at the University of Washington has long confirmed that crows can remember the faces of humans who pose a threat to them, pass that danger information to other members of their group, and even transmit it to the next generation. So if you happen to see a few crows staring at you, appearing to whisper among themselves, they might really be talking bad about you. Yet such a highly intelligent bird has long been burdened with a reputation for ill omen in culture. The source of this prejudice is mainly its appearance and voice. Its all-black feathers, though compared to brightly colored birds like peacocks and parrots, have been culturally tied to solemnity and funerals. Added to that is the crow's harsh, raspy call, which easily makes people uncomfortable. But the main reason actually lies in the crow's diet. Crows are typical omnivores. They eat insects, grains, small animals, and do not reject carrion. In ancient times, when burial was common, the smell of decaying corpses attracted crows to funeral sites, and with their piercing calls, over time crows became deeply associated with death and misfortune. Ironically, human attitudes toward crows have always been contradictory. We trample them as symbols of ill omen, while also elevating them to the pedestal of filial piety. The saying, "crows feed their parents in return," has been passed down for hundreds of years. But from the perspective of modern animal behavior, there is no rigorous study that confirms crows have stable parental care behavior. Yet that has not stopped the image of crows feeding back from becoming a classic symbol of gratitude and filial piety, carrying our beautiful expectations of family love and virtue. Having talked about the misunderstood crow, let's move on to a fish that was pulled back from the brink of extinction. In the Amazon rainforest, there is a fish that lived alongside the dinosaurs, the arapaima. It can grow up to 3 meters long and weigh 400 pounds. Its scales are so hard that piranhas would break their teeth trying to bite them. It has evolved a composite armor that is hard on the outside and tough on the inside, which has even inspired the design of military bulletproof vests. It must surface every 15 minutes or so to gulp air because its swim bladder has evolved into a lung-like structure. This was originally its unique skill for dominating the oxygen-depleted waters of the Amazon. When the water is too murky to see anything, it can hear the movements of prey from a distance. While other fish are suffocating, it surfaces for a breath and then charges underwater. But this has also become its fatal weakness. Each time it surfaces, it makes a loud, sputtering sound that can be heard from hundreds of meters away. For over 100 million years, it had no natural enemies in the sky or on the ground, until humans arrived with fishing nets and harpoons. The arapaima's meat is delicious and is considered a high-end ingredient locally. Commercial fishing fleets drove it to near extinction. In many places, the arapaima almost disappeared. But the story did not end there. In the Jurua River Basin in west-central Brazil, local communities decided to save the fish themselves. They established protected lakes, banned fishing, and set up sustainable fishing quotas. The results were stunning. In protected lakes, arapaima numbers were 55 times higher than in unprotected lakes. In the Jurua Basin, the arapaima population increased by 600% over 11 years. Some lakes that originally had only 20 or 30 arapaima recovered to 2,000 or 3,000. This prehistoric aquatic monster, which had thrived for hundreds of millions of years, was pushed to the edge by humans, and then miraculously revived through human protection. Incidentally, the arapaima is also a famously devoted father among fish. The pair build a nest together and guard the eggs. After the young hatch, the male serves as a full-time bodyguard for up to 3 months. In danger, the male directly opens his mouth and takes all his young into his mouth to carry them away. Even more extraordinary, adult arapaima have glands on their heads that secrete a nutritious liquid. Locals call it fish milk. This liquid contains hundreds of bioactive compounds related to growth and immunity, not only feeding the young, but also boosting their immune systems. In the fish world, this level of paternal care is extremely rare. Alright, the 4 stories are done. The War of the Chimpanzees showed us the shadow in the depths of human nature. The intelligence of crows made us rethink what it means to be smart. The tragedy of the vultures taught us that good intentions can lead to bad outcomes. The recovery of the arapaima gives us hope that as long as humans are willing, we can also become restorers of nature, not just destroyers. These misunderstood lives, each in their own way, tell us the same thing. Nature does not need us to judge it by human moral standards. Crows are not ill omens. They just have black feathers and eat carrion. Vultures are not cruel. They are the last line of defense for the ecosystem. The arapaima is not just fish for the taking. It is a living fossil that has survived hundreds of millions of years, and a miracle that was saved by humans. We always think that humans are the measure of all things. Cute things should be protected. Ugly things should be eliminated. Cruel things should be driven away. But the laws of nature have never been governed by human aesthetics or morality. Every species has its irreplaceable ecological niche. Respect them, keep your distance, and keep your hands to yourself. That is the best thing we can do for these misunderstood lives. Subscribe to me, and we'll see you next time.